Hello, all. Please bear with us for a sec. There will be a brief delay as we set up this Facebook live stream. But while we're waiting, let me ask my guests a hot question, just a hot seat question. So you're in combat. Would you rather face one 50-foot horse or 1,000 tiny horses, and why?
I guess I would say probably the 50-foot horse, because once you get through it, it's done, even though it's hard work.
Yeah, it would be hard work. What would be your strategy with this horse?
I don't know. I would probably try to maybe I would try to give it a ton of apples and clean up the situation.
That's actually a good strat. Yeah. Kill them with kindness. There you go. All right. And it looks like we are live. Hello and welcome, everyone. My name is Kalila, and I am the Outreach and Public Relations Coordinator for Moms in Motion and At Home Your Way. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really have, I've been looking forward to this presentation myself, so I'm sure that you will find some value as well in it. Just a few housekeeping items. If for some reason our presentation today is interrupted or there are any technical difficulties, please rest assured that we will go ahead and complete our presentation, and we will get a recap up as quickly as possible. It usually goes up within a week, but if for some reason it's interrupted, I promise I will try to get that back up for us today. And as far as it goes with questions, if you have any questions, you can feel free to jot those down in the chat box, and at the end we will address those questions if we do have time. If not, I can also provide our speaker's email address so that we can get you those answers at a later time. With that being said, I want to welcome Alicia Lutman. She has been working with first responders and families with children with autism for over a decade, which is amazing. I'm so super excited, like I said, that we have her today to share with us, and I do hope that you find value in what she's presenting today. It's all yours, Alicia.
All right. Thank you. Well, I want to thank you for letting me come and speak today. And I hope that there really is some value that you can take from what I have to share. The first thing that I would like to share with you is just about occupational therapy. A lot of more mainstream media is picking up on what occupational therapy is, and there are a lot more conversations about occupational therapy. But we are definitely a valuable therapy that can help support individuals with autism to be as functional as possible. And my background is I am an occupational therapist. So this is kind of how I got tied into working with first responders as well as individuals with autism. So just to help provide a definition of occupational therapy, the role of occupational therapy can be defined as being practitioners who provide client-centered, evidence-based services with individuals of all ages in multiple settings to improve occupational performance and participation in daily life. So when we're looking at what the specific needs are for individuals with autism, this can include environmental adaptation, social skills training, fine motor skills, safety, sensory processing, self-advocacy, parent and caregiver education, and activities to address basically all areas of need in relation to life skills. So today, the information that I'm going to share with you really ties in very much so to safety and kind of helping to improve maybe some of that functional independence and maintaining a safe environment. Today, I'm going to talk to you about overall safety concerns, especially related to what is considered to be elopement, also known as wandering. We're going to talk about water safety, and we're also going to talk about the concerns that we have in relation to the decreased sense of danger and environmental awareness that individuals on the spectrum often exhibit. We're going to talk about interactions with first responders, take a look at how crisis situations kind of tend to unfold and how we can deal with those. And then we're also going to talk a little bit about social stories, which you all may have some familiarity with them or you may not. So it'll just be a brief overview, and I'll be happy to provide some more information about where you can access social stories and even create some of your own. So to start off, we're going to talk about some of the safety statistics. It should be known that the leading cause of death among individuals with autism is drowning, and that is something that is preventable. So we're going to talk about that quite a bit today. Researchers have found that the mortality rate of individuals with autism is twice as high as the general population. So there's more likely to be an accident that results in death. 48% of children with ASD attempt to escape a safe environment. So they are 4 times more likely than their unaffected siblings to try and escape what would be considered a safe environment. And unfortunately, between the ages of 7 and 10, they're actually 8 times more likely to elope or kind of escape that environment. Intellectual disability also puts children at 4 times the risk of sexual abuse than children without disability. So we really need to kind of heighten our awareness in relation to trying to keep our loved ones safe, understanding that sometimes the disabilities that they are experiencing can actually put them at a higher risk for some of these safety concerns. So let's talk about wandering, also known as elopement. If an individual is prone to wandering, they require some level of supervision for safety. So an individual who wanders or elopes will leave a safe environment without the realization of safety risks. So they don't understand that I'm safe here and where I'm going may not be as safe. So there are 3 different types of wandering. We have goal-directed, which is basically, I want to go somewhere. I want to get somewhere. So leaving to get something or get somewhere, such as if they see water or they just want to go to the park or there's a certain place that they love to go. Then we also have fleeing, and this is leaving to get away from something. So if I'm scared in a situation, I'm feeling anxious, I don't like this, so I'm leaving to escape. I want to get away from here. And then there can just be this other category where we may just be disoriented. There may be confusion. Maybe they've gotten lost. They may just be bored. So these are the 3 different types of wandering that we generally see. In order to prevent the wandering and elopement, there are some things that family members can do. One of the biggest things is kind of communicate about the individual's needs, thinking about neighbors, using the eyes and ears of neighbors to help out, having conversations with first responders before we get into situations so that they are aware that I have a child that does sometimes wander. And then also talking to the teachers and the school, because we want to be sure that the school has a plan in case your child is a wanderer and they elope from the school building. We also want to educate our individual with autism about safety. So we can use social stories to help. We cannot match every single situation. It's just not possible, but we can kind of help them, because generalizing is hard, but we can help them understand what happens when there's a fire drill. We can help them understand what happens if there's a tornado drill and use social stories to help kind of guide that. We can also use videos as well as peer demonstration and modeling for what kind of some of those safety expectations are when we're walking quietly in the hallway, when we put our seatbelt on in the car. But we want to ensure that the environment is safe and have a plan. So one thing that you can do is actually call into the dispatch center for your local area and have some information that's kept on file there so that they understand that if someone calls from a certain address, there may be someone that cannot communicate in the same way that they are accustomed to. There may be somebody that is more at risk for elopement if they get startled or scared. And this will kind of help things be one step ahead. They can even keep a photo of the individual on hand, and you can update that photo so that they already have the information if they need it. We can also think about our home and environmental modifications. So sometimes it's just a matter of putting a little alarm that beeps when the door opens, or a chair or bed alarm so that we know when the individual gets up at night. Motion sensor lights can be helpful, as well as using blinds to kind of close what's going on outside with the windows, as well as even just a simple stop sign, just put up a stop sign. And fences can also be something that can help some. However, if you are in an excited moment, that fence may not do a whole lot to stop. But when we're thinking about like playgrounds and the school property, that can be a big help with things there. And finally, there is a program available called Project Lifesaver. And there are different agencies that are involved with, basically it's a GPS tracker that you can, it's a tracking bracelet. And this is one way that you can have involvement with first responders, because the batteries have to be changed. And so then we can have some regular interaction, but this would be something to consider. If your child is at a high risk for elopement, it definitely helps to make those situations come to closure much more rapidly. Water safety is a big issue that I want to kind of encourage you guys to think about today, just because we are aware that drowning is kind of one of the highest risks for individuals on the autism spectrum. So one recommendation would be to do swimming lessons. And this doesn't mean that they have to be an Olympic swimmer. They don't have to love it. But if they can learn how to keep their head above water until help can get there, that's going to be a critical tool for them. We want to be aware ourselves of the surroundings and any water that may be nearby. Thinking about just lakes, ponds, creeks, even the like decorative garden pools, any type of water, because a lot of individuals on the spectrum are drawn to the water, the way the light shimmers across the water. It is a very relaxing thing. We want to kind of think about the fences that we can have and pool alarms, as well as encouraging the individual to wear a life vest when we are around water. And then also using some of those social stories about water safety and just repetition of those stories so that we understand that this is what we need to do to be safe. One of the other issues that can be a barrier is kind of having that decreased self-awareness in relation to safety and overall environmental awareness. So we want to educate other children and adults that are around that might be interacting with our individual that has autism, just to help them understand, hey, sometimes he doesn't always look both ways before we're crossing the street. So if you see that he's getting close to the edge of the road, let's step in. Using social stories to help understand how unsafe situations unfold. And then just as an adult, scanning the environment, especially if you're in a new environment, maybe you're going for a birthday party, maybe you're going for a family cookout, and just kind of have a little bit more understanding of the limitations and dangers. So being aware of where the entrances and exits are, being aware of where the stairs are, knowing if there's water around, being aware of lights and noises and smells that might trigger that anxiety that might increase the risk of someone eloping from the situation. All right, so this is a big place where I have done a lot of work, and I feel like this is one place that we can really do some proactive things to help make our encounters with first responders more successful. So the first thing that I would encourage is taking time to make opportunities to meet first responders when it's not an emergency situation, okay? And let them see the equipment and the tools and the things that might be used during an emergency. And this helps to establish relationships on both sides. This helps whether it's police officers or firefighters or paramedics, it helps them understand this is how this individual interacts with me, and this is how I can communicate with them. So when we think about police officers, understanding about police cars, with paramedics, learning about the ambulances, and then firefighters, the fire truck, and just those tools that they might use. We also want to try and use social stories as much as possible to talk about how to approach a first responder, as well as how to communicate. And if we use an alternative communication method, we need to learn how to help others understand that that's how we communicate. For some, it might be the use of a bracelet. For others, it might be the use of a picture card, but something to help that first responder understand I can't communicate with you in the way that you are accustomed to. And then again, like we said, providing information to dispatch so they can actually flag your address in the system. They can even go as far as flagging a license plate so that when somebody gets pulled over, they understand that there is someone in this car that does not communicate verbally. And then also just keeping that updated information about the child, especially if they are a wandering risk, so that we're kind of one step ahead of the game if something were to happen. And I think there are lots of opportunities out in the community that we can take to interact with first responders, but sometimes it's even more than like that, you know, the National Night Out and some of the events that sometimes agencies put on, because that's not quite as personal as it might need to be. And it may need to happen over a number of times in order to kind of build that relationship. But it's better to have that relationship built before the time of crisis, so that we can kind of, because it's definitely easier to see a familiar face when we're in a time of crisis. So now let's talk about some of the crisis situations. And this is one place where sometimes individuals who don't understand autism can kind of get into a little bit of trouble, because we expect behavior to occur in a certain way and we expect things to be in a certain way. And unfortunately, when we have those expectations, it can actually increase the crisis situation. So basically, we need to expect the unexpected. Really, we want to try to de-escalate the situation before it actually becomes a crisis. However, a lot of individuals that we've interacted with on a regular basis, we understand that sometimes it's just going to have to play out. We're just going to have to let it go. And unfortunately, there have been first responders that have learned from experience that if we try to restrain someone in this situation, if we try to, you know, physically change what's going on here, it actually can become harmful for the individual involved as well as the first responders. So, you know, we want to make sure that everybody's safe in the environment, but we also need to kind of just let it play out. And I know that sometimes it can play out for an extended period of time, but that's part of helping with some of that safety. And basically what we need to understand is we're watching someone who's trying to cope with an overwhelming situation. This is just their response to what's going on. So yes, ideally, we're going to de-escalate it before we hit that, you know, that we realize that there's an agitation going on. We've identified the trigger. We can't identify every single trigger, and we cannot prevent every single acceleration. But learning from experience, we can problem solve and figure out how to make the next situation a little bit less challenging. So this is just kind of a chart of the overall escalation cycle. It kind of helps us to understand what behaviors we might see when the individual is in this phase, and then things that can happen to kind of be an intervention. So when an individual is calm, they're able to follow directions. They're less likely to react to a situation that might be provoking to them. And they respond to praise. So if you tell them they're doing a good job or you like the way they're listening, they're going to respond to that. They're able to make a mistake and receive correction for it. And they're interested in showing, you know, things that they've done and telling you about their accomplishments. So this is the place where we can figure out what their functional level is. And we can also kind of try to find some alternative behaviors. If there's something that's not quite maybe appropriate as a behavior, we might be able to teach them a replacement behavior maybe. And then also this is where we can start to practice some of those preventative techniques like deep breathing and just kind of rethinking a situation. The calm stage is where we would talk about social stories, okay? When somebody becomes triggered and they have a provocation from another person, this is where things are beginning to kind of escalate a little bit. So maybe they've had an interruption from their routine, or they were expecting a reward of some sort and did not get it. They're being challenged with a problem-solving situation. Maybe they've made repetitive errors, or there's a consequence for a behavior choice that was made. So this is where it's important for us to identify what behavior happened that triggered this, and we can kind of try to modify the outcomes of things. We can also encourage alternative behaviors, and we might be able to teach some problem solving here. Once we get into the agitation stage where things have not turned around, we may see increased body, eye, and hand movement, and speech may become challenging, or they may not be able to speak at all. They may be very, very agitated. So this would be a time where, we're going to let you have some quiet time. We're going to let you settle down. We're not going to challenge you. We're going to give you easy things that I know you'll be successful with. And we're going to provide things that are very concrete. We're not going to work on any abstract ideas, such as, some of the things that we have to work on with some of the social stories. Those are kind of abstract ideas. If things continue, we then end up with this acceleration. So we've got some engagement behaviors that we're going to start to see that will get what they're expecting as a predictable response. They may use threats, they may use intimidation, there may be defiance. This is where we may see the elopement. They may leave, just physically get up and leave the situation. We may see physical aggression or self-abuse or even property destruction. So we want to try to get them to a safe place early on. We want to intervene early. And we also want to rehearse what the expected behaviors are so that they understand that this is what it is. We're going to provide them reminders of this. And again, we may need to back off of what we're doing. This may need to be a time that we just stop and give them a chance to, cool down. This is not where we're going to be able to make significant changes. If it is something that we have to do, such as a change in a routine, this is a place where we can kind of help to say, this is a change in our schedule. This is what we're going to do. This is what we have to do. But you have to understand that this may continue going basically to that point of no return. So that would be the peak. Here we definitely see a lot of physical aggression, self-abuse, property destruction. A lot of times it gets referred to as tantrums. You may even see hyperventilation. And if they are someone who tries to elope and they haven't already escaped at this point in time, this would be where we would see the escape. So we want to avoid physical restraints as much as possible. We definitely want to clear the room, give them a timeout. And this may be a place where we need to have an emergency plan in place in order to get some assistance. Once the peak has been reached, we then have a de-escalation period. We don't just drop down and everything's okay. So there's oftentimes confusion. This is not the time to talk about what choice was made that wasn't a good choice. This is not the time to talk about the behavior. So we may see them withdraw, but they may begin to be responsive to a concrete direction, such as sit down. They may deny a serious incident. So as soon as they start to turn around and start to return to the expected activities, we can praise them for it. This is probably not the best time to kind of debrief from the situation. They may not be ready yet, or they might. So it kind of depends on the individual. But definitely during the recovery, we have this willingness to resume that routine. We're doing tasks that maybe don't require interaction. Their behavior is a little bit more subdued. This is where we can kind of focus on that normal routine. Again, praise that appropriate behavior. And this is where we can rehearse some of that problem solving so that we can figure out how to prevent a situation from occurring again. So obviously, preventing the crisis is kind of the key. We want to learn what triggers are, and then we also need to work on desensitizing some of those triggers and maybe reducing some of the response. And this is one place where occupational therapists can help quite a bit. We can use our social stories and kind of practice things in smaller steps. And again, we want to try to create safe spaces in as many environments as possible, especially those that you frequent, so that we know that there is a place that you can go and you can calm, and we don't have to continue escalating. And then we don't necessarily see that escape behavior so much because this is a settling place. And social stories are something that I've mentioned several times, but basically a social story is a way to help explain behaviors and social interactions and skills or concepts that can be abstract and kind of hard to comprehend. So we more than likely will use words in combination with pictures and images. Depending on the individual, the pictures and images may be more important, and the words may not be written. We may be saying the words. Adults can help to write the story, and if you're working with an older child, they can actually help to illustrate it. I've worked with a lot of children that this has been good. Sometimes we have a negative situation and we maybe made a choice that wasn't so great. So we draw a picture of that, and then we draw a picture of what would have been a better choice. But this, again, needs to be used during that time of calm, not during an escalation or even that de-escalation. And eventually, this can become a tool to help prevent the escalation from happening. So these are some examples of social stories. There's lots of different ways to approach creating a social story. So this one says, sometimes I feel frustrated or upset. It's okay to feel frustrated, but I need to stop and calm down. My work doesn't need to be perfect. I just need to try my best. When I'm frustrated or upset, I can tell Miss Ashley or Miss Holbrook, and they can help. So we can write any story that we need to for any situation. The problem is we can't write a story for every situation. So that can be the challenge with social stories. If we can help them learn how to generalize some of the information a little bit more, it can help them be more successfully. So this one would be good choices versus not so good choices. So when my classmates have computer time and I want it now, these are things that I can do, right? I could throw a tantrum, I could throw things, I could hit people, or I could ask to play too, wait my turn, ask for something different. So these are kind of some of the different methods that can be used with the social stories. So this is the presentation resource. The American Occupational Therapy Association has a lot more information about how occupational therapists can help serving clients with autism spectrum disorder. And I also have a page of resources that we're going to try to put into the chat so that you guys can have that further information as needed. So if there are any questions at this time, I'd be happy to answer any of those. And if you don't feel comfortable asking them here on the live, I'm happy to answer any over email as well.
Thank you so much, Alicia. So I did go ahead and put those resources in the chat box so that everyone has them and they can jot them down before we close out this. And I also did include your email address. But I don't have any questions right now. But for our viewers, what questions do you have? We'll give it just a couple of seconds here. And as always, we are, of course, accessible through email, through our inbox, our website, also in the chat box, and we will get your questions answered if you think of something a little later, or maybe if it's a question that might be a little more personal in nature, you can definitely email that directly to Alicia as well. But like I said, that was a very thorough presentation. And, you know, something that really kind of stuck out to me was what you said about not doing those things in the moment. You know, we got to address them like in a calm moment. But, you know, of course, that seems counterintuitive. So you have to teach yourself that and get used to it. So I personally appreciate that little tidbit because I can put that into play with my own son. You know, so very, very helpful. So it doesn't look like we have any questions. Again, I want to thank you for your time, Alicia. And I also want to thank everyone who's watching today. I really do appreciate you hopping on because, you know, it's summertime and of course you can be anywhere, literally virtually anywhere. It's lunchtime. So it shows how important this is for you and your family. And we definitely appreciate that. We will upload this as a recap, and I'll get that up on social media, I'd say within a week at the latest. But we do also upload those and include them in our newsletter. So if you have not subscribed yet, please visit our website at www.momsinmotion.net and subscribe there so that we can get you this timely information every month. With that being said, thank you again, Alicia, and thank you all for watching. As usual, please stay safe and keep a lookout on our social media for our next Facebook Live event. Have a good one.